Hello, my name is Dan Hawes from Graduate Recruiters Network. It gives me great pleasure to bring you a recording of a recent event we held at the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales in London. Entitled an HR Masterclass, we looked at the way HR can impact on the business. We started off with an introduction from Jenny Austin from Graduate Recruitment Bureau. Then we moved to Lynn Hamilton-Gow from the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales. And then we heard from Amy Bartritt from Metaswitch. I hope you find the recording interesting.
Thank you. Enjoy it. Thank you.
So, agenda for this morning, we're going to have a little bit of an introduction just about what today is all about, and then not having a good day with technology, and then we're going to hear from Sharon at IC and Lynn at CAW, sorry, my fault, and yeah, she's going to be telling us a little bit more about the trends on campus at the moment, and kind of what students are thinking. Then we'll have a bit of time for Q&A, so any questions, and a little bit of a break as well, so time for tea and coffee, some pastries and things as well this morning. And then just after that, we'll be hearing from Amy, who is the acting head of HR for Metaswitch, and she's going to be telling us about her impact in the business and how we measure our impact within HR roles and recruitment as well. So if anyone needs a comfort break or anything, the bathrooms, if you go out the door at the back, are just down the corridor on the left. I don't think we've got any fire alarms planned today, so if there is one, we'll just make the way out where we came in and down the stairs out the front door, we're going to show you where to go. So as well, using my paper notes as well. So a little bit about GRB. I'm not going to tell you loads this morning because that's not what it is about, but we've been going now for over 22 years. Set up in 2009 by Dan and Chris, two company owners of the university. And we're now about 70 or 80 of us down in Brighton and in London. It's been an absolutely amazing year, completely record-breaking again, which is fab. Really, really busy at the moment. Got 4 different divisions. We do sort of specialise mainly in graduate recruitment, obviously, hence today. And we cover all sectors, all industries, loads of different types of companies, pretty much every sector you can imagine. It's definitely got a mind of its own, these slides this morning. And yeah, we've got 4 different divisions. So we've got GRB, who deal with the graduate and early talent. We then have Cortex, Metrica, and Quota as well. So we do also have divisions in experience hire finance, IT, and analytics. And we do pretty much everything in the grad industry, from attraction campaigns, helping re-strategize, helping people come up with new ways of doing things in the industry. We do full RPO, so if people are just really, really stretched, need support, maybe just even support with CV screening or telephone interviews, video interviews, testing, pretty much everything, and our search and selection agency as well. We specialise as an industry in kind of top-ranked universities and graduates. We do cover the whole of the UK as well, making sure diversity and everything is really, really strong for our clients' campaigns. We did have a slide, but it's not up here, on what GRN is about today. But it's been going since about 2009, 2010, I think it is now. We've got over 2,500 members. And again, it's a real breadth of different people. So you will find today in the room there's small companies right up to big kind of top 50 businesses, small graduate campaigns up to huge ones as well, people even just setting up and designing them. So, you know, do learn from each other, chat to each other about what's going on. I think everyone's always really surprised. We've normally always got fairly similar challenges and successes as well. So it's often quite reassuring, good to build a network of people in standalone roles as well. The point of today is to kind of cover general trends and topics in the industry. We've had a real breadth of different topics covered. Each time, obviously, it's really, really different, and we always also cover what kind of trends is happening on in campus as well. We do have podcasts of it, we have newsletters, we've got our LinkedIn group. We are also live streaming it today, which is fabulous when the technology is working so well. Looks not at all slick this morning, but it is what it is. But yeah, so please do be active afterwards. I think people are often quite nervous to share questions on the LinkedIn group, but it is only internal recruiters, not agencies. It's kind of the point of it is for you guys to have a channel to chat amongst yourselves. So if anyone gets any wider questions, don't be afraid to ask us and each other, to be honest. Thank you all for being here today, as I said. it is really, really busy. The next event is going to be in March on the 10th. So do pencil that in if you're about. But again, in the meantime, do come to us if you get questions. We can direct you to other people in the network to have a bit of a chat. So I'm going to pass you over to Lynn. As I said, so she's going to tell you a little bit more about what is on campus this morning. Got 2 pieces of paper in front of me. But yeah, so she works at ICAW, who provide the fabulous space for us today. Amazing offices, really, really great people for the support they provide for the events as well. So I'm going to pass you over, but I'm just going to go in the cupboard and get your presentation.
Oh, good. Where is it? So just a tiny bit about who we are. So ICAW stands for the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. The name's a little bit deceiving because we've actually got over 150,000 members in around 148 countries across the globe. We support, and that number's actually gone up quite a lot this year. So we've got over 30,000 students now currently studying our qualification. Around a quarter of them are international. And we also work with around about 6,000 authorised employers who offer our qualifications to their employees. So apart from hosting the event today, you may be wondering why we are involved in graduate recruitment. So just to give you a little bit of background, our student engagement team travel the UK. So last year we engaged with over 22,000 students at face-to-face events in the UK. And since September, Lucy's and my team, her team, have been very busy. And they have actually engaged with over 11,000 students just in the beginning of September, so it's been a really busy round for us this year so far. Part of the view from the campus session is about actually our team speaking to students, speaking to employers, careers advisors, lecturers, academics, and getting feedback from them and finding out what the themes are. And there's a couple of things which have come up which I thought I'd share with you today. The first question that we've heard a lot of is, what are my options if I miss the graduate application scheme deadlines? So we're finding that students are actually still really struggling to kind of balance that, assignment deadlines, exams, and actually applying for the grad scheme. So that's pretty much a common theme, but it seems to be even busier. I think especially with the kind of pressure on tuition fees and loans, students want to get the best out of their qualification and are kind of worrying about applying a bit later. As we know, research shows that females tend to apply later as well. So I think if your focus is on kind of gender diversity, there's still opportunities next year to kind of increase the amount of females that are potentially applying for those grad schemes. So the second question, and this is kind of what I'm going to focus on in the presentation today. This seems to be coming up increasingly, and so this is kind of the focus really. So with the demands from employers for students to be able to demonstrate not only those academic skills but also those professional skills, students are saying that work experience is really the key way for them to be able to stand out from the crowd. However, many students that we speak to find it really difficult to kind of articulate what it is they want to get out of these work experience placements. So I think for a lot of them they've been told to do it as a bit of a add to the CV, ticking the box really to say that they've done it when they go to assessment centres and interviews. Also, the kind of traditional ways of offering work experience may be putting off some students, so where it's not flexible or there's a cost associated for those students, especially those from sort of more deprived areas, that can be seen as a barrier to them actually getting quality work experience. So I've had a little look at some of the trends in work experience just to give you some stats. So I've had a quick look at the ISE survey, which was done at the beginning of the year with about 157 employers in the UK. They classify internships as short-term, less than 6 months, and placements as longer-term, 6 to 12 months. So of those employers who responded, 70% of them said that they hired interns, and 54% actually hired placement students. But overall, the trends are slightly falling. So the intern volumes are down to 4%, and placements down by 7%, which is actually driven by kind of the energy, engineering, and industry sectors. So it's one particular sector that's kind of tracking that direction. Looking at the student side and just digging into the high flyers research. So for those that don't know, they survey just under 20,000 students every year and get feedback. So of those final place students that they surveyed earlier this year, 2/5 had done work placements. with graduate employers, and they completed on average about 7 months worth of work experience across their time at university. Interestingly, only 40% of students have actually done casual work this year, and that's dropped from about 74% 10 years ago. So it looks like students are actually doing more placements, internships, getting that work experience from graduate employers rather than the more part-time casual work that might support them while they're at university. So that's an interesting trend. So of those students who did work placements, 2/5 of those were then offered a grad job, but only 2/3 of them actually chose to accept it. And actually 1/4 of those that did work experience had been put off for working with that employer again or from that sector. So actually quite a lot of them actually having a negative experience, which isn't great. And then in that research there, just looking at the motivations for undertaking work experience, I think it's pretty straightforward. For students, it's all about what can they put on their CV, it's getting a better understanding of that particular sector, that particular industry, and actually hoping to get a grad job at the end of it. For the employers we speak to, reasons are accessing a more diverse pool of students, obviously building that future recruitment pipeline. But also there's a lot in there about actually building relationships with local universities, starting to build awareness with those students, their influencers, parents, so that in the future they've got more chance of attracting that talent and quality of students. So just some feedback in terms of what we've seen that's working, that's kind of different from the norm. We've seen quite a bit of sort of pan-profession and sector collaborations with work experience. There's a couple of initiatives that we've been involved in. The first is Access Accountancy. So we're working with other professional bodies, other financial institutes, the Big Four, the Big Six there, to actually offer and get together and offer a sort of collaborative approach to work experience for students. Also, we've worked with the Social Mobility Business Partnership. So that's working with some big brands across London, Manchester, Glasgow, Belfast to offer more to 5 days, and that actually seems to be working well. It takes away some of the commitment and time restraints and resources that are needed to put that together by working as a group. One other thing we've seen actually, which is interesting, is work experience toolkits. So there's quite a few professional bodies, government organisations that are actually offering free toolkits now that we can use with students. Some examples of them are AGCAS, so the Careers and Guidance Services. The NHS have actually got their own toolkit. We offer our own toolkit as well. So if you're looking to bring in work experience, there are things out there you can access for free to help you implement that. We're seeing that actually shorter term placements seem to be working quite well. So rather than the traditional 6 to 12 month placements, actually just maybe 1, 2, 3, up to 6 weeks worth can take away, again, a lot of that commitment from the employer and the student. Students can get more variety of work experience by going to different employers. And actually by making them project focused, so setting a defined task or outcome at the beginning, makes it much more tangible for the employer and for the student. So that seems to be working really well. Just a very quick example of a partner that we've been working with. So City University offer what they call micro placements. These are set up, they work with 160 employers. Each employer will define a business challenge and actually come up with a project for that particular student to solve. Placements range from about 3 to 5 weeks and can actually be full and part-time. It's actually considering offering part-time is something which not a lot of employers do at the moment, but a couple of days a week might actually work better for your organisation than full weeks. Okay, so just thinking differently about work experience. We work, when we go to careers fairs, we often will work with regional employers who come with us to be able to kind of piggyback in our activity and talk to students. Where we've spoken to employers, they've actually been really surprised about the level of interest from students asking about work experience, especially for those who don't offer it. When we've spoken to them about why they don't offer it, it's often cited as, well, it's hassle, we're too busy, workloads don't allow it, resources don't allow it. For those employers that do offer programmes, actually we think there's some opportunities with some tweaks that can actually get more benefit out of it and have a bigger impact on the business. So as mentioned, it's worth looking at kind of quality over quantity. Work experience doesn't have to be months and months long. a few good quality hours can be more beneficial than longer placements sometimes. As I mentioned, students don't often know what they want or what they think they want to get out of work experience. Again, just seen as a kind of tick in the box. But by making the outcomes and objectives of the work experience more tangible, the benefits are clear for both student and the employer, which could be a specific business challenge or problem that the business is facing. So keeping it real, I'm not trying to be down with the kids, can't pretend to be at all. But actually thinking about how you can give them a genuine experience of work experience. Can they come to board meetings with you? Can they come into strategy sessions with you? Can they shadow you out on client visits? So actually, rather than setting up scenarios for them that might not be real, actually taking them in and taking them into board meetings. And we've been chatting about it earlier. This is giving me some really good examples of an employer who's taken them into a board meeting and actually realised, why are we running our board meetings this way? And the students have fed back, why is it so formal? Why have we got this? And actually looking at making them more effective. So there is benefit for the employer as well as for the student. Many employers through sort of the recruitment process will test things like time management, prioritising tasks, setting up your day. So actually by bringing those sorts of tasks into work experience can really help students when they come to those assessment centres and recruitment processes. And then finally offering things like travel and lunch expenses. I think a lot of students are put off about what the costs might be, but by offering some incentives that way can really help make a difference for some students. And then work experience is actually a two-way thing, so there should be benefits for both the employer and for the student. So why not ask students about their feedback of how they felt it went, what was their perceptions of your company before and after. These insights can be really valuable to help you develop that work experience placement going forward for future students. And even if the student decides not to pursue that career, as I've seen in my earlier slide, a quarter of those have been put off. Actually, if you give them a really good experience, even if they don't go on to apply at your company, they can still be great brand ambassadors for you back on campus. So if the students seem to have the potential to be a future employee, it's looking for ways to try and keep them engaged through to finishing their qualification. So whether that is inviting them along to social events, or potentially using existing employees to be a buddy or a mentor for them until they finish their degree, it's a really great way of kind of keeping them in touch with the organisation through to that point where they may come and join you as a permanent member of staff. So finally, just linking back to that impact. So how can work experience improve the impact? Well, it gives a real kind of try before you buy, both for the student and for the employer. And if it's successful for both parties, then hopefully you've got an engaged and motivated employee who may join you in the future. Obviously, opportunities for brand awareness, not just from that work experience placement, but also their parents, their influencers, their university, if they've had a good experience, go back and talk about it. A key one really for all of us is improving that diversity challenge. So going back to my point earlier about accessing those students in sort of more deprived area and helping with social mobility, access, work experience can really give students that opportunity. As I mentioned, that feedback loop can help you improve that work experience programme for students in the future. And also working with partners and universities. This can help you as a way into building those relationships with universities, potentially working with them to kind of shape the curriculum going forward, and also gives you access to students in the future, again building that brand awareness. So thank you for your time this morning. I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight into some of the key discussions that we've been hearing on campus. And finally, just want to say for the first time actually, Merry Christmas to everybody. She's a little bit scary because there's still quite a lot of Christmas shopping to do. But yeah, just open it up for a bit of discussion now.
I've got a question. Out of interest, I don't know if you've come across in any of your research about the impact of, and you may not have done, but kind of paid or unpaid work experience opportunities, because it's something that we, I guess, get asked quite a lot. Like we talk about it internally as well, sometimes about whether or not we should actually promote them or not. And we still get a huge amount of demand from employers to promote unpaid ones. So we still do that, but kind of feel there's a bit of a kind of moral dilemma with actually how that's perceived in the industry as well. But it's still very commonplace. Is that something you've kind of come across in any of this at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obviously the longer term ones tend to be at least kind of living wage. I think there's still an expectation that some of the shorter ones are unpaid. But thinking again about that kind of social mobility aspect of it, in an ideal world, those ones would be paid at least lunch, travel expenses, so they're not out of pocket. I think it goes back to offering that flexibility as well for students that have got other commitments, family or other part-time jobs, it's to be able to give them the flexibility to still be able to access it. Anything else you want to?
Just okay, it just unpaid is so frowned upon still.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree, and it's a difficult one because I can understand it's like I think from the employer's perspective, it's kind of well, everyone else does it in our industry, that's what we should do. But it's because we actually for years we've never ever done it, we've never promoted them at all, and we've done it for the first time kind of this year to see well there is an industry that students still want to get into. But yeah, I mean I guess that feedback bit about social mobility, diversity generally, it's definitely a challenge. But
I think if someone's doing a piece of work or a job that you would pay someone else to do, both morally and I think legally, although I know it's a bit of a grey area, but I do believe that legally
they have to be paid. Isn't it?
If you pay someone to do that work, or if someone else is getting paid to do that same work, then you have to be paying them.
There are some guidelines on the government website I was looking at around you can't make somebody else redundant because you've got an unpaid person and all those. And if you're paying somebody else to do that job, you should be paying them to do that. I think if you're setting up a particular, as you say, like a particular project or there's a business challenge and they're actually delivering something for you, I think it's quite unfair for them not to be paid for it. I think the traditional work experiences, you're just kind of following me around for a couple of weeks and seeing what we're doing. It's not really adding value, but if they're actually adding value to the business and delivering something for your organisation, I think they should.
I've got a question. You talked about only 2/5 are doing work experience and internships of the high flyers. I mean, 3/5 are not having any experience at all, and yet they're still high flyers. How is that?
The high flyers research looks at they take the top universities in the UK. So you've also got a whole range of other universities who are not in that particular piece of research. It'd be interesting actually. And we work with a company called Trendons who do the whole range. So that should be interesting to speak to them and say from that group, the because that's got Russell Group and all those key universities in there, what the other universities are doing and what those stats would look like in there. So that'd be quite interesting to look at.
So I just wonder what other firms are doing about work experience and internships for people outside of London, because we're finding that it's quite preclusive really for people to do internships when actually the pay for that month is quite difficult. We're just looking at potentially paying for travel or even accommodation over that month to try and bring people from outside of London to give them the opportunity for internships. Otherwise it's just we're finding it quite difficult. I just wondered if anyone else had any suggestions on what they're doing.
I could answer that if that's helpful. I'll talk a little bit about my company when I speak in a minute, but in the UK we've got quite a few offices, so to give you an idea, we're just outside of North London, so in Greater London, and we've also got sites in Edinburgh, Coventry, Chester, and Belfast in the UK. So in our main offices we offer work experience, pre-class is shadowing, so during that they get like a little bonus if they do well, but it's limited to a very short period of time. Paid internships, and they tend to be in summer, and it can be a length of time that's suitable to that student. And then we do placements. I think placements are less common in our industry, but in Edinburgh we're a quite big hub, and London. So London, we've got our own accommodation, we own houses. So we pay for internships and people get a discounted rent to live in accommodation, and then with all the other interns and graduates, it's a bit like a uni away from home. So that actually helps us. People can come from all over and they can choose what site. In Edinburgh, we don't own accommodation, but we have arrangements with landlords, and again, it's subsidised and they get payment. For us, it's really good for diversity. We're in the STEM sector, technology. I'll go into that a little bit. But it also, by offering accommodation, we can get people from all different universities all over. And it's a really good pipeline for us. Our conversion rate from interns to graduates is really strong, so it's win-win for us. Any more?
Just curious if there's any evidence to suggest whether having an internship program helps or hinders your kind of diversity to your grad programs. So there are more women doing internships, there are more men, more BAME students doing that. Does it help or hinder your future grad?
Anybody in the room got any experience of?
It is an interesting question actually to look at. Who is more likely to do an internship, I guess, and if that's potentially going to be impacting like grad conversions and things.
I mean, the internship definitely does help us, and I think the fact that we pay doesn't rule people out, which is a big driver for us making a payment. On the actual diversity bit, it's quite interesting because we've been focusing on that quite a lot over the last few years, and we have seen the diversity go up. I'm not going to say we're perfect, we still have massive challenges in that area. But because our intern to grad pipeline is strong, because our intern base is becoming more diverse, our graduates are, I can't say, I'd like to think it is because we pay and we offer in different locations, but or if it's just STEM is suddenly widening, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting to look into that actually.
We have a paid internship summer placements. We just can't provide enough. I mean, no exaggeration, every career fair you go to, literally every first year, second year, third year graduates come around saying, can you offer a placement, can you offer a placement?
And I think the short-term ones, you're right, are actually in sometimes higher demand because it's kind of easier around their studies to do things in the summer. And you're right, I would say, you know, we experience the same with companies that come to us for great attraction is we don't get enough short-term internships for the amount of students coming to us going, can you help us? What ones have you got? How many, you know, different sectors? So
I was going to ask, how do you keep it fair?
With great difficulty, we get three numbers on headcount. We get an ideal, what I'm allowed to sign off, and what's the maximum we can take. By maximum we take, we work out because they're assigned a mentor and they need a manager, so we have a good. So we know there's a max capacity. It's a bit of a juggling act. So we collect data every week, and obviously there is a question which is really interesting you put up around people are struggling to make application deadlines. But we can take applications all year, but obviously places can fill up soon. So that is actually a struggle for us. So we try and keep it open as much as possible. What we want to do is not accept applications if we know that the pipeline is going to be shut off soon. So it's quite a challenge. And this time of year, like we've still got assessment centres up to the 20th of December, which wouldn't normally be running them that close to Christmas. But I think we've been booked until the end of February. So we're trying to get in as many as we can. So for our graduates, we take between 40 and 50. But generally, we would have had 3,000 people apply for that. So that's really, you know, the team try and do as much as they can, make sure they're going to lots of universities, involve loads of networks. We're doing more from specific diversity events. But the problem we have is that we have an overwhelming number of applications. And if there's some people that are less likely to apply straight away, I do think there could be something in our process that we need to think about.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lynn. So we're just going to take a kind of 10-15 minute break now. But yeah, thank you very much for some of the insights there. There's definitely some ideas for people to have a little bit of think about. But yeah, to help you out, we've got teas and coffees and pastries and things at the front. And then we'll start back up at about 10 o'clock. So we're actually running a little bit ahead of time. So I'm going to pass you over to Amy now, as we said. So she works at MetaSwitch, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about her role and how she sort of measures the impact of what she does in that position.
Thanks, Jen. And I just should quickly click. We had a few technical issues. I had kindly asked Jen to do my slides for me. So if I'm staring at her a lot, it's because she implemented new slides.
I'm liable.
You know, delegate the problem, essentially. So thank you, everybody, for having me. It's lovely to speak to you and meet some of you. So next slide, Jen.
Sorry, exactly what you meant.
Okay, so in in terms of this talk today, I'm going to do a little bit of introduction of who I am, where I've worked, a little bit about me. And then I'm going to kind of split this topic down into, like 3 parts. What we want to do is what good looks like in our roles, and it's quite broad. I know we've got HR and recruitment professionals in the room. Use of different quantitative and qualitative measures to demonstrate impact, HR's favourite thing, right? And then we do a third bit around different sort of influencing styles to aid stakeholder management. My interpretation of this is kind of to do this quite practical and give you some examples of things that have happened at MetaSwitch in the last year. And then hopefully at the end we can have a good Q&A, and you can also ask those questions. So, who am I? So I've kind of got this great thing actually, that I've got 2 roles at MetaSwitch, which is great because I like to be kept busy and challenged. So I'm a senior HR business partner and I'm acting head of HR. So I'm going to go through a bit what that means, but basically I've got a really broad and wide remit. Prior to that, I was at 5 years at Financial Times, where I was a senior HR business partner there. I did a standalone role for a little while. Wasn't for me, as you can see, under a year. I can go into a bit more detail why. Before that, I worked in retail and I was a regional HR advisor there. So quite a varied background, different industries, different sectors. And I guess for the context of this talk, I guess how my impact was measured really differed in all of those roles. I mean, the obvious reason would be the seniority, but sort of industry context, I guess what my manager wanted me to do, expectations of the workforce, and that really did vary. So I'm going to go into how I measure my impacts measured at the FT and MetaSwitch. But before I start, MetaSwitch who is often what I get heard. We're a B2B business, so I actually could stand and talk about MetaSwitch for ages, but we're at a graduate recruitment event, so I thought what I'd do is play the first minute and a half of our graduate recruitment video, and these are actually MetaSwitch people telling you what we do. So fingers crossed.
MetaSwitch builds software products that run at the heart of the world's largest mobile and fixed networks to enable operators worldwide to bring really innovative new communication services with voice and video and messaging.
When you pick up your phone and you type in a number and that goes through across magically to somebody else, you hear their voice, our products are making that happen.
It's a fantastic place to be because of fabulous, smart set of people to work with, challenging problems that keep you busy and occupied, and a really exciting, interesting industry to be in.
We obviously spend a lot of time helping our graduates to learn and understand the craft of creating great software. Fortunately, we work in a technology area that's constantly changing. So that drives a lot of change and variety in our jobs.
Always new challenges. We never get bored.
Your managers will be looking for new opportunities for you to take on, complete different roles, complete different challenges.
We have to have the best people sat around thinking really hard and being really creative in their job.
So we didn't understand that, but essentially MetaSwitch, so if I was to phone one of you in the room, our software would be making that phone line work in the background. So basically really sophisticated software. Our new thing is 5G, and we've probably heard about 5G. We're always after the next new thing and it's going to be innovative. And a part of that is being around really smart people who love the brand, really passionate about what they do. Everybody who's in that video actually works for us. And those senior leaders that are actually on the screen, they've all come up through the graduate scheme. So they stay with us. Our retention is really, really high. And that makes for a really, really supportive environment and a really fun place to work. Thank you, Jen.
I think I'm going to stick with recruitment. I don't think tech is for me.
Okay, thank you. The first topic I said I'd talk about was what good looks like in our role. I think sometimes it isn't really a presentation if I don't say something slightly controversial to get everybody listening. And I guess for the first speech, by the way, I truly do believe this, which is certification doesn't mean that you're competent. So yeah, of course we can do all the qualifications in the world, can read all the books, go to all the lectures, go to all the talks. But actually, I think being in HR recruitment is about those relationships you build and the way you execute and support the business. And that can be quite challenging, I think, but it's what makes it so interesting. There's the second bubble there. We are consultants to rate questions, insight and challenge. I guess when I sort of tipped over into more senior roles and I started thinking about how I got things done, how I could influence working with really senior people in comparison to kind of my age and tenure and all of those things. This is kind of the way that sort of shaped and helped them do that. And I think now I always go into a meeting thinking more like a consultant, being objective, not being afraid to make recommendations, ask questions, seek to understand. And I think that's really important in what I do. As a business partner, I guess this is mostly relevant, but around aligning what we do to business outcomes and focusing on deliverables. So what's the business trying to do and how can we help achieve that? Our currency is execution and relationships. So yes, being a business partner or head of HR or head of recruitment or whatever your role may be, it is about those relationships, but it's more than having a great conversation, it's actually getting stuff done as well, and I think that's what you're measured on. The middle bullet point, I guess just thinking about, you know, what good looks like in our role and how we might describe our roles. I think we're all these things. I think we're advisors, facilitators, analysts, disruptors, champion of change, or I should say positive change, and a role model. And I think I could go on and on and on there, but I think that kind of summarises to me what we're trying to do. And the last point I think is really important, which is around sort of maintaining that employee voice, but being commercial with it. And that's something I never want to forget. The more senior I get, the more meetings I'm in, the more times I speak to the CEO and sort of the VPs, I tend to sometimes think that I'm the only person in the room that actually maybe has a real pulse on what our employees are saying, how they think, how they feel. And I actually, I'm not doing my role properly if I don't share that, how I share that in an objective way. Maintaining the objectivity, the commercial and pragmatic approach is really important. And the way, I'll show you how I do that in a little bit, got some tools and things, but that's what I take really seriously, and I think that's where I really add value, and that's where I'm acting for our employees. So kind of, I guess all of those things, above and beyond that, I think it's about being genuine, credible and trustworthy, pragmatic, and being a champion of positive change. Okay, so I was going to mention what my remit covers. I've done my very best to capture it all. It's quite a broad remit. But I manage a team, so I've got a team of direct reports. One of those team members then has their own team as well. I always have someone out in the States, so I've got a global report. One of my big items that I was asked to do when I joined Metaswitch, so I joined in February, is to implement a business partner model. So they didn't have that previously, so that's been a real thing that I wanted to get off the ground, show the business how that works, deliver against that, add value and hopefully build that team. Strategic projects, everyone loves a strategy. Projects and value add sit in my team, and what they are really depends on business need, what we're picking up, what we need to do. But there is an example that I go on to in a few slides around developing careers at Metaswitch, and that's a strategic project we ran. Employee engagement is a big part of my team, and we do quarterly employee engagement surveys, and that's part of the analytics we use. Reward. I kind of laugh at that. That's been a big project since I've been there in February that we're about to launch in January. I'm not going to say that I'm a specialist in reward, but I think at Metaswitch, where we are in the maturity of our HR team, a lot of the specialisms come into my team. So the central ops team and everything else is me. So we've got an issue with reward. So me and my HR analyst have been working on this. And I can share more in a little bit. But it's been interesting because I've never run a reward project before. Diversity and inclusion, so my involvement in that is on so many different levels. I guess there's a professional level, but also a personal level. It's something I'm really passionate about. So I sit on the steering committee and work with the networks. Learning and development, so I mentioned all the specialisms come under me. I also run training, design it, deliver it, everything at the moment. People analytics and data. So I'm really pleased actually that a member of my team has taken an interest in this. So he's now a HR analyst, and we've got some support there. But it's fantastic, and it has really shaped the way we do things. Talent identification and succession plan. Well, I've got a star there because we've done the talent identification bit since I've been here in February, but what we actually do with it is still work in progress, and we're getting there. Early years recruitment, that comes on me. So work experience, interns, graduates, and this one off actually, apprentices. We're doing apprentices now too. Natural recruitment, so experienced hires. So, bit of a broad remit. Okay, so that's everything that comes under it. So how possibly can you look at how, I don't know, my impact is measured and what good looks like? So the first 4 bullet points, I'm going to talk you through this. I know it's quite word heavy, but all senior managers at Metaswitch are measured against these. This is like independent of the department. So your people management and leadership, project scope and delivery, skills leadership, and scope. And these actually are really key. These are written down, there's criteria, there's guidelines you're assessed against. And actually, being really honest, that's how our bonus is measured. This is what's important to Metaswitch, this is what they hold really true, and independent of that, that's how I'm assessed. And actually that's really helpful, and how you do that can vary within function, but I'm being assessed against my peers, finance, engineering, etc. And then like a different way to kind of look at how my impact's measured. These are kind of not verbatim, the next lot of bullet points, but these are kind of what I hear, and this is what my insight is. So I'm going to start with the head of engineering. So a technology business, and the engineering team is probably like 2/3 of our business, so he's a key stakeholder of mine. And I'm going to explain this, and actually he's a really lovely guy, I just want to put this out there. But one of my second meeting with him, he sort of swung around in his chair and said, Amy, there's 2 things you can do for me. And I was like, okay. He said, I want you to hire me the best people, and I want you to help me keep my people, and that's your problem. Okay, right, okay. So I had to go away and look at what we're doing there, and actually it's quite a big project because graduates and early years recruitment has been really successful for Metaswitch. That is our pipeline. As the business scales, we're about 800 to 900 people now. We need to build up our lateral pipeline to learn to kind of find out where these key people are, poach them, for a better word, find them. And that's a whole process that needs putting together that's completely different to the way we've looked at our talent pipelines. And sort of retention of smart technical people. Well, at Metaswitch we retain them because of the really, really great culture we have there. But also it's a very, very competitive landscape. So new people are coming in that want the skills that our workforce have in a way that we haven't had before. So direct techs, graduates, and all of those things. And it's super, super competitive, and that's where some of the reward project kicks in. I actually had a little view with myself last night when I wrote these slides. I don't know if this is just a brain on, but I put the CEO after the head of engineering. So I should say it's not in order of importance, but maybe this is just how my head works. I don't know. Over the next slide, I'm going to show you the HR metrics that we report to him quarterly. But I guess above and beyond that, something that's perhaps different to some CEOs is that Martin really believes that Justine, myself, Justine my manager, are his line of sight into the business. So he wants to tell us what's important to our people and what he should do. And only the other day we had a senior manager meeting, and we were sat in the room, and we had, it's not an HR topic, it was a commercial topic about when we talk to the business. Nothing that exciting, by the way. But so we had all the senior leaders, and we was like, let's just wait till it's done, wait till it's done, wait till it's done. I was thinking, I disagree with all of you. But it was really helpful. I'll go through people in a minute, but I can actually back up what I'm hearing with like information from our engagement team system around what our people are saying, and put that against industry averages, pull out some verbatim quotes and back it up. Unfortunately, he's changed his mind. So he does hold that really true. Global head of HR, so that's my manager. So Justine heads up HR and operational teams underneath her as well. I guess the reason she hired me was to kind of bring the outside in, so somebody from somewhere else at a senior level that's going to provide constructive challenge. I hope she still says that after working with me for nearly a year, because I always question everything. And I guess what she values a lot is inquiring with the business, so being up to date with what our people are saying and what's important to them. HR teams, I mentioned I'm a manager, and I guess for them, they want me to be the manager and leader who enables them to work to the best of their abilities. They're pretty ambitious, so they want to grow, but they ultimately want to enjoy their work, and trying to do that and balance all the other stuff. Hopefully I'm doing okay, but that was a big ask. Metaswitch employees. So Metaswitch employees are pretty demanding of the HR team, which I love a challenge, but I often have interesting conversations when I go and grab coffee and by the water cooler. But I guess what they're really looking for me to do is impact and drive change for their employee experience. So they want cutting edge people practices, that could be a whole host of different things. Diversity and inclusion is really, really important to our people. They really recognise the role they play in the STEM industry. So what am I going to do about that is the question. career growth, they want to grow their careers, they want to stay, but they want to be paid really well for it too. And how do we do that? I've called out millennial and Gen Z employees differently because I don't know about anybody else in the room, and I'd love to hear from you that new sort of cohorts entering the workforce, we're seeing a change in what they expect of us. And we're actually, I think, as a HR team, starting from a place of distrust, like, who are you? You're the police, you need any money, I don't trust you. But you want to take that data from me? Well, what are you going to store that? What are you using that for? And I'm finding ways to work with them to get them on side and know that we're there to support them, and actually we really want them to have a great employee experience with us. And then obviously beyond all of that, how I measure my own impact. Well, I'm new in role, so I've been there less than a year, so I do need to deliver. And I guess the deliveries on key projects, recruitment, I guess sort of kicking in a little bit to the MetaSwitch employees and millennial bit, but evolving the impact and perception of HR from admin to sort of value add and trusted partner. That's something that's been really key that I wanted to do. And ultimately, the MetaSwitch is a great place to work. So our CEO was on the video. He's American, but his vision, and it's in my job description, is to make MetaSwitch an awesome place to work. I actually really love it because whenever I make a suggestion, I was like, you told me to make it an awesome place to work. He's like, yeah, okay. So it actually gives me the green light to do a lot. I do love that that's in there. And just, you can't quite see it, but to just kick on my teeth that I really do want them to be happy and enjoying what they do. I love coming into work. So I mentioned that we submit metrics to our CEO every quarter. So we have something called a quarterly business review at MetaSwitch, and essentially what that is, it's a senior manager meeting. We come together every quarter and we give the highlights of what's happening in our function. So the key metrics, finance and HR and engineering and sort of current themes. And these are all the bits that we talk through. So engagement, I mentioned, we measure every quarter. Retention is really important. So if MetaSwitch is an awesome place to work, we want to stay. Attraction is huge, and we're always monitoring this. So I say graduate, I should say early years, I mean all of that. But number of offers accepted, how we're retaining those people, how we're stretching them, how quickly they're progressing on a steep trajectory. Their experience, we collect loads of feedback, which is really, really helpful. Lateral recruitment, I mentioned this is something we're doing more and more of. Time to fill is quite an interesting metric, and we're looking to close that gap. It was originally quite high. I've got Emma in the room actually, who's just joined us, and is this role been open this long? I was like, yeah, fill it. And obviously we finished with those that new talent pool that we're bringing in. So we're bringing people in from the outside where we haven't done before. How do they feel when they come aboard? Do they feel included? Do they want to stay with us? What do they need that's different to a new workforce? And obviously we've been getting feedback from them as well. Gender pay gap. We report on that, and we need to report on that, but MetaSwitch we take that very seriously. So we do a lot more internally, we share a lot more of our data. We really want transparent around that. Overdue reviews, this kind of ties into we want MetaSwitch to be an awesome place to work, and part of that, people have careers, they can grow. And we actually measure and make sure people are having reviews, so they're having performance conversations. So that's a really key metric. And it can be quite eye-opening sometimes. In the QBRs, we'll be like, in engineering, you're like 3 months behind in your reviews. You're sort of held up to account for that because it's a real part of our culture. Diversity and inclusion, I mentioned was one of the part of my remit. I have to be honest, today we focus more on gender data because that's been our biggest issue in the STEM industry, but we've got desires to do more around that. And implementation of the business partner model. So I mentioned I'm the best business partner. And actually, no one really at MetaSwitch knew what that was, including the HR team. So one of the first things I did was a presentation of, this is what I've done previously, and now we need to find how that fits into MetaSwitch. Even people in MetaSwitch, like in engineering, would come up to me and say, that's a really cool title, who are you partnering with? I was like, you. So that's been kind of fun. I'm really pleased though that it's going well, and actually I've got the green light to increase headcounts. I've got a new business partner starting in January to report into me, so I really see that team doing more and more. And I think they've realised, hey, you can't quite partner 900 people. No. Thank you, Jen. So So kind of following on from the QBR theme, last QBR, Justine and I presented on our HR strategy. In terms of measuring impact, I think this is quite interesting. This is the first time Metaswitch have had HR strategy, and there's a lot of work gone into this. And to give you an idea, we've kind of got input from the business, so talking to senior leaders, stakeholders, our employees, looking at the data we've got, talking to our HR and recruitment team, and actually said, okay, what is it we want to do, where we're going, how are we going to do that, and what's important. And our vision kind of hangs off exactly what our CEO says. You might want to redefine that about, making Metaswitch an awesome, I don't know, awesome is a bit of a funny word, my team don't personally love it, but our CEO does, and it's a really good thing to hang off. So it kind of leads on to some of those bits around, increasing partnership, leading cutting edge people practices, a data-driven HR capability, building diverse external and internal talent pipelines, building high-performing teams, developing the skills, knowledge and behaviours we need for the future success of Metaswitch. All pretty cool stuff, probably nothing like you haven't heard of or thought of, but now that we've articulated it, we're now able to set objectives for all the team to help support that. As I said, it's an ambitious team, they want to do more, and so that's been a really key part. And I've got to deliver on this, which is a little bit scary, but exciting and challenging, and it's gone down really well. Metaswitch didn't know really what a people strategy was, so it's been a really interesting experience talking to the business about it. So now we just need to achieve it all. No pressure. So how does this differ from other roles that I thought? Just briefly, I just talked about my prior role before Metaswitch and how it differed. So as I said, I was a HR business partner at the Financial Times. To give you a bit of context, I was one of 3 HR business partners, and it was within quite a typical Ulrich model. And so the remit and my impact was measured quite differently. I've got loads of views on Ulrich, by the way, if anyone wants to talk about that at the end, but that's not the purpose of this talk. But these are actually the real key things that were pulled out and we've discussed in my reviews when I was at the Financial Times. So if I'm delivering something or supporting the delivery of something, what was the impact of that? And did we achieve the results? So I'd have to be talking and putting data on that. Engagement score, was I making progress on that? How was I doing that? How was I influencing? How was I working with stakeholders? We were more further along the HR journey than Metaswitch, so I did have really key D&I goals for the business areas I supported, and I was assessed against that. Quite difficult, but fun. Feedback from business and stakeholders around partnership and the support I provided. So I did like 360 reviews and things like that. What else have we got there? So the HR business partner should be the exec's blind spot. This is always a fun one, right? So you're building a relationship with someone, we're working with them. At the time, the Financial Times was going for a huge transformation from a paper product to a digital product. And we're asking a lot of our people and asking them to do different things. So whenever there's change, there's also uncertainty with people. And I found myself quite often, I guess, holding the mirror up a little bit and just saying, yeah, this is great, get this, but have you thought about this thing over here? And I was the only person sort of in the room that was able to do that. And I learned quickly how to do that and how not to do that, so that was quite interesting. How effective was I at knowing the business area? So people insights, their analytics, right? It's what people are saying. So am I bringing that back into the HR department? Like, am I taking insight out of the HR department into the business? It was a business of 3,500, so that was really key because how we did stuff at scale was important. Was there a people plan in place? So again, we were a little bit further along the Metaswitch. So the talent identification, the succession plan, the development plans, what we were doing with our people. I had a little bit more there. Strong internal and external network, that was really, really important. So journalists were I worked for, so we needed to be able to talk around the subject loads more. I had HR metrics similar to Metaswitch. And I generally had one big global project a year to run, which is cool. And I mainly work with other business areas, so I was staying in touch. But that's kind of how I was measured at the FT. Okay, so I mentioned the maturity model just then in terms of where the FT was, where Metaswitch was. I'm not going to say I come up with this. This actually came from Francisco partners who are based out in Silicon Valley. But I think this is quite helpful because I've talked around how me, as in me as a person, was measured as an impact. But now I'm head of HR, I need to think of how is our whole department being measured in terms of impact. So if we kind of take the first column, I guess, is your traditional personnel department from years ago, compliance driven, making sure the legal stuff's being done. And then the fourth column, sort of business integrated HR, I guess that's probably more like a Facebook and Google model, like truly integrated and driving. I'd say with MetaSwitch, when I came in and I started, we were probably pillar 2. We're verging on to pillar 3 now, but I think that's being kind. I probably look at a few things there, and I think there's still some work to be done. But I guess the aim for me is to kind of turn that dial and influence that and move up to a strong sort of 3 in the next year and maybe a 4 afterwards, if that's not too progressive. But it's not just about me, it's about my team and my supporting their development. You know, are they getting out, networking externally, internally? Are we all driving towards that? So that's definitely a part of how the CEO would be measuring my impact coming in as head of HR. Am I delivering more? Are we operating differently? So the second topic that I said I would talk about was the use of different quantitative and qualitative measures to demonstrate impact. And when I spoke to Dan about this talk, I said I prefer to do it by using practical examples than talking about those in theory. I'm not a consultant, but what I can do is tell you some of the things we do at MetaSwitch. So this is exactly that. So this is, I think, week 2 at MetaSwitch. So we've got a great project for you. Can you partner the business with this? Actually, don't quite know what it is, but there's something to do with attrition. Okay, perfect. Yeah, great. Actually, it was great because it got me out meeting stakeholders straight away, meeting people in the business. And basically, what drove this project was we saw, so the message model has always been bring in people early years, keep them retained, move them around, progress their careers, you know, let them kind of do what they interest, what their strengths are, and retain them. So it's not unusual to be in a room of people that have got 20 years experience. I'm generally going to be a newbie probably for the next 10 years, and that kind of sets the context. What they found was, as new people were coming into the workforce, there was kind of a drop-off under 7 years. Again, against industry standards, that's probably not bad in technology, but for MetaSwitch, it was unheard of, and they wanted me to investigate what was going on there and why that was. And actually, digging into it a bit more, we discovered that actually there were some people, as the business has scaled, they're not really sure how they can progress their careers, and actually saw their career progression by going somewhere else. So learning how to become a software engineer at MetaSwitch and then moving businesses. And, you know, whilst a small number is acceptable, that's not really what we want in our business model. Our software engineers use really sophisticated technology, so there's a long payback from having a graduate in terms of them being able to deliver stuff. There's a steep ramp, so it's not really in our interest to spend a couple of years training them up because they wouldn't have actually probably delivered anything. And so it's really key that if that pipeline's going to be successful, that we can retain people. So how do we do that? So set up a team. So I worked with one of the VPs in engineering, who reported into the head of engineering. We brought in some senior managers and we said, okay, this is the problem, this is the data. How do we go about this? Let's have a project team. Some people in technology call them squads. Project team, whatever floats your boat, but that was our group. We set ourselves a big goal. So at the top, make MetaSwitch an awesome place to work by identifying meaningful career progression. And how are we going to do that? We're going to look for improved employee engagement, satisfaction, skills development, and reduced attrition. Okay, so how do we do that? So we define the scope. So we limited the department, we limited the number of years service, we did a random selection of 50 employees. We sent them a survey to collect baseline data, and that's when we input some aspirations, concerns, ideas. We did follow-up workshops, called the workshops in engineering. If you work in HR, they're focus groups, to discuss comments and ideas. We then pulled together a plan, so a recommendation, and we then went to the People Development Guild and the DEI Steering Committee. So MetaSwitch, being a technology business, does run in guilds, networks, scrums, all of those things. So as well as having like a coding guild, we have a People Development Guild, a group of like-minded people that they're really passionate about this. So we went and run through our ideas with them. They provided some input and challenge, as with the DEI Steering Committee. As I said, DEI is really important to us. So whenever we're rolling anything out, we use them as a bit of a stress test to make sure we are being inclusive. email suggestions. I can go into what we did, but for the purpose of today, I'm not. I can have to answer at the end. But so obviously we executed that and rolled that out. It included communicating the plan, the engineering on plans, subsequent email updates. That doesn't sound that exciting, but engineering had never had a people update or anyone from HR talking. So it was almost like, oh my goodness, HR are on the agenda. What are they going to talk about? And HR are emailing us about what's happening with our careers. This is awesome, or it's not. I'm giving some feedback. You've got a typo in your email. You know, that kind of thing. But really, that was a big part of being front of centre on it and how important it was. It was an agile project, so again, we worked in software. So we tried to adopt methodology that engineering understands. We have 3 sprints. I personally love working agile. I like working in sprints, and they're quite motivating, and that helped us achieve quite a lot quite quickly. So we did a whole host of stuff. We communicated it. We did it in sprints. And how are we measuring that impact? Well, engagement's a big thing. As I mentioned that a couple of times, we look at that every quarter, of which we do have verbatim comments on all of these things. Retention, I've got to be honest, it's a little bit too soon to tell, but we do assess it quarterly. So I guess the test will be sort of in a year's time, I guess, whether that little drop-off that we were seeing has stopped. But the immediate feedback, we needed something quite in the moment, right, rather than sort of waiting for the payback, was to actually go back to those focus groups and say, look, you said a whole host of stuff, this is what we did, is that working for you, is there something different? And actually we've got a little bit of feedback that's fed into another project, which feeds in quite nicely to the reward project I mentioned earlier. So it's kind of ongoing and it's live, but the whole way through we've taken quite an analytical approach. We've tried to run it in a way that engineering are familiar with, and we're communicating it a lot. And I think I'm due to speak at the engineering hands again soon to kind of talk about progress. So that's one example. So I mentioned engagement quite a bit. So I'm not here to sell systems, I'm in no way related, but I just wanted to show you some of the tools that I use daily that are always open on my dashboard. And Peakon is one of them. Coincidentally, we use it at the Financial Times as well, so it was great for me crossing over so we knew how to use it. But we run it every quarter. We can go in and see an overall engagement figure and cut it by geography, by department, by line managers. And basically what Peakon does is it's got a whole host of drivers. It identifies what drivers are most important to your organisation in terms of how people are responding, how well you're doing it against them, and areas where you can drive focus and improvement. So I mentioned that senior manager meeting I was in only the other week. There were some things coming up from there that directly related to this. So I could give an engagement figure, I could give it how we fitted against industry benchmark, I could put my recommendation forward, and I backed it up with about 20 quotes, just in case we didn't get my quote. So that's what I use all the time. This is our HR dashboard. Some of you might have really fancy HRISs. When I was at the FT, I had Workday. At Metaswitch, we don't. The function is maturing, going through that model. Actually, this is a dashboard that gives me everything I need. This is just the top, the front page is actually 3 pages of data. It updates overnight, but basically we can get real-time data on all those metrics I talked about that we present to the CEO and the senior leaders. Max, my team, actually built it in-house, so he's learned to code, which is pretty cool. I don't know how he did that, but the point is I've got a link. I can go and look at real-time data, so if I'm in a meeting and somebody's talking about something, and quickly go in and say, well, actually, this is happening, or that's happening, and it kind of backs up my argument, and I kind of have them open all the time. Max is very good at upwards management, and he says it's about making me self-sufficient. Which I love, and he's not wrong, by the way. I'm like, Max, what's this? And he's like, have you looked at your dashboard? No, okay, yeah, I got it, thank you. But it's just really, really important to have that data. And I guess coming into a new organisation, that's something that I was really used to. Having launched Workday, I had it on my mobile, so I could quickly pull stuff up, and I got a little bit lost, like, where are my data? So now this project's been finished, the fact that we are self-sufficient, we haven't had to go and invest loads at the moment because we're invested in our team and other things. But I've still got what I need to kind of do my job. So these are some of the tools that I use for data. Okay, so the third point we said was around like influencing stakeholders and how we do that to sort of measure our impact and actually that is our impact. And there's a few slides that will go through this. This very exciting diagram that I did draw myself, with my notes, it's basically something, so I've worked with a few executive coaches in my career, some at Financial Times, some at MetaSearch, and actually they all kind of come back to this model, and you don't need anything super complicated. This actually really helps. So I'm going to talk you through it, and I do use this in one of my training sessions at MetaSearch. I'm going to call this Q1 up here. It's going to be Q2, Q3, and Q4. And what I like about the model, I like to be a bit controversial. There's a lot of executive coaches who say there's no right or wrong way, you know, it's all about being you, but being authentically you. This is the opposite, there is a right and wrong way. So the most effective way is Q1. Whatever you're doing is just a version of Q1. So I'm going to talk you through it, and then if it doesn't make any sense, Jenny's going to ask me some questions, right? So, it's about thinking your audience, it's thinking about who you're talking to, and what they're like as a person. So, Q1 is about being assertive and warm, and that's meant to be the most effective way for you to get stuff done. Are you being nice, but are you being strong enough? And what version do you do? So, if I'm talking to, I don't know, potentially a CEO who might love this place over here, and I'm trying to be over here. If the CEO is super cold and super assertive, I don't want to be super warm and super assertive. I'm not going to have any impact. He's not going to register, or she, I should say. Oops. Our CEO is a he. That's why I'm doing that. I'm not saying he's super up here, but I would definitely say there are moments where he's up here. If I'm super warm, he's not going to respect me. I'm not going to be credible. So I tone down the warmth, but I keep the assertive. So I'm kind of on his level. But the idea and the bit of the game is if that conversation's gone well, I've brought him over to my side a little bit, over to the warm and assertive side. I kind of influenced that conversation. I kept the credibility, but kind of meeting him a little bit. So, and actually, when we use this at Financial Times, I don't think my previous manager will mind you so. Her natural preference was to be submissive and warm. She wanted a great team, she wanted people to be happy, didn't want to rock the boat. And so sometimes what she needed to do was if she was going into like a board meeting or something, was say, don't be submissive, be assertive, and push herself up there. And even if she only ended up there, that was probably good for her, and she probably did get an outcome. But the whole way through, it's around how can I get to Q1? What do they like? What do they need from me? What do they respect? How do they like to be spoken to? And with our CEO, I like to start with something controversial because then he's listening, he's not bored. And also gets him listening, and then he'll normally say something straight back. So I'm kind of on his level, and I kind of bring him over. So as well as this, so there's this model. I do think about this, and if I've got a particularly challenging meeting, I will sometimes draw this in my notebook. I think right there, here, like how we're going to open this. And the more and more I use it, the less I have to draw it, and the more I'm just immediately thinking about it. But beyond this model, if you're going into a meeting or you're in the moment, I think the top tips I have would be to kind of think like a consultant or coach. What do I mean by that? I mean, you know, it's about being objective and it's seeking to understand and asking questions and make sure you're fully informed. Once you've got all of that information, you feel like you've got the current reality, it's then going forward and making a recommendation. Okay, you know, so what I'm hearing is X, Y, and Z. Is that the case? Is there more information I need? Okay, from what you said, could I make a recommendation here? I think we should do X, Y, and Z. And that kind of lands a little bit better than, I don't know, just going in straight away with, you're doing it all wrong. I guess if my natural reaction is, you should do X, I would ask a question rather than saying, you should do X. So it tends to land a bit better. So that's kind of my top tips. Think like a consultant and coach, and you can never do enough self-development. So things like Facet 5. I know people don't always like Myers-Briggs, but I do a lot around psychometrics and self-development. The more you know about yourself, the better you are at influencing others. So I said to make it as practical. I'm going to give you a top tip. Bluff your CEO. That's the top line. What does this mean? It means bottom line up front. This is actually like really key, and he's really open about this. Like when I had one of my first meetings, he said, "I like bluff," and I was like, "Okay." He's like, "No, give me the bottom line up front. Don't ever come to me and talk to me about something that hasn't given me the bottom line up front." So, okay, what does that mean? Well, actually, it's meant that my presentations have become a lot better. So rather than spending 20 minutes, actually, you can judge that when you're talking about that. Anyway, in terms of like, if I was going over a business case or something, my first slide is everything he needs to know. So we don't ever get to the other slides. The other information isn't relevant. He just needs to look at the first slide. What do we want? How much is it going to cost? And why? We don't always ask for money, but at the moment we're going through this transformation that we are a little bit. So last week, I mentioned Max in my team, and Max and I had some time with our CEO who was over from the US, and we had an investment request for an onboarding system. So our first part of this presentation said how much it's going to cost, what platform we wanted, what the key benefits were, can we have the money? And then we'd sent the slide deck ahead. So the slide deck, I think it's maybe about 10 slides, and there are other things on there around business case, context, current reality, other providers, feedback, etc. That was all in the back. He'd read that all before. He loved the first slide. He loved the system, so he looked at it. Bearing in mind he's a software engineer at heart, he's like a CEO. Asking for some money from the software isn't easy because he will have Googled all the competitors, looked at the security of the company. I'm not even joking. Said, oh yeah, this seems really viable. They've had some more equity back in them. I was like, we knew that. And it was a really, really easy meeting. Basically, he was like, yeah, sounds good. I want to talk to you about something else. So poor Max has spent ages practicing his presentation and his 20 slides. Didn't even need it. We got the money straight away. So bluff your CEO, basically. Okay, so I'm going to try and summarise everything I've said. I don't know if I said this, but I'm going to say it now because I do say this all the time to my team. So the very topic of what we're talking about today, around how we measure our impact, there's a small part of me, maybe a major part of me, finds that actually quite irritating. Do finance directors, marketing directors stand here and say, how we measured their impact? Probably not. It's my experience with the organisations I've worked for. So part of me just wants us to be a bit bolder. We've got a really hard job. If the remit's really big, if the other departments don't pick it up, it's possible to HR. So I think we should be bolder and unapologetic for who we are. And I really mean that. And I don't mean be a bit of an arse. You've got to do it well. It's not it's how you do it. But fundamentally, I think we're here to do the job. I think we all try our hardest. And I'm not going to apologise for that. Be analytical. So a lot of people talk about HR being data-driven. And hopefully I've shown you in examples. It's around everything, focus groups, qualitative data, engagement surveys, HR metrics, it's all of that. It's even that conversation had by the water cooler that backs up something you've seen in some other metrics. Remember your audience, think of that model, EQ1, bluff everyone. And I said this at the beginning around these speech bubbles, but be genuine, be yourself, be credible, so be informed, network, people here, so you're all doing that. Be trustworthy, bring those Gen Z and millennials with you. Be the employee voice. So remember, sometimes in the senior manager meeting, sometimes you're the only person that is informed on that, and you should share it. Whilst doing that, be commercial and pragmatic. I'd love Workday. I wasn't going to get that this year, so we built our own dashboard, so we're going to do it anyway. And be a champion of positive change. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, really good presentation. Thank you for all the different tips and ideas for everyone. I was just going to say I quite like the BLUF acronym, because interestingly, internally, someone recently said to me, one of my sort of colleagues in my team had sent someone to us quite senior, and they never really got to the point because they'd kind of got bored of all the detail before that, and they were like, I only really needed the last bullet point, and it was kind of a realisation of actually, you're right, sometimes they just want to know the kind of the bottom line facts first, and then if they need the detail, it's there. So I quite like that. I've got a quick question, of course. I think, how long have MetaSwitch been going?
35 years.
Because quite interestingly, it feels like quite a progressive place to work for early talent.
Yes.
Is that something that you're still kind of obviously continually having to make changes internally? I mean, you were talking about millennials and Gen Z and stuff. Yeah. Is that something that can be a challenge within the business for you guys?
Yeah, I think because the sorts of skill sets that we're looking for, people can go and use those skill sets to a whole host of roles now. I think it's more competitive. So we kind of need to think what's our like unique selling point. And everyone talks about great cultures and what's a great culture, what's a nice culture. But I think we need to get better at marketing what I mean with that. I'll give you an example actually. Jenny and I were talking and say, at Metaswitch we have something called like a morale fund, because morale and engagement is really, really important. So I have a budget per head in my team to use each year to do some fun stuff. So this week we're going to Winter Wonderland. In spring we're going to Barcelona for the weekend, purely to eat the tapas and drink the sangria. That's literally all it is. But it's all about how we come together and building really strong teams. That's super important for software development. You know, psychological safety, scrum masters, being a team, you know, not being line managed. That's really, really important. But that's the heart of Metaswitch. So how do we sell that? How do we be competitive? You know, looking at our processes, are they all cutting edge? I'll be honest with you, from a graduate perspective, we're pretty lucky. We do get a lot of applications. So it's not my super focus right now to building lateral recruitment, because we kind of do get quality, but there is a desire to look at our assessment centres and rework those. They probably could do with it now, but they're working, so we've got other areas of focus. So that, yeah, it is something that's important. And we will continue to try and make sure we're talking to what those is that workforce are looking for from us. Thank you. Any questions?
Just ask them about your onboarding.
Yes.
I only noticed it up there because it's a focus for us at the moment.
Yeah.
And just from that point of sort of offer stage, whether it's grad or lateral as well, through to then keeping somebody engaged to that point of joining. What do you do in that?
So we've got the investment last week. The job is to turn it around super quick. So the idea is going to be, so it's a cloud-based software system. So at the point at which we make an offer, we obviously make the verbal offer, we can shoot something across to that candidate. They can pick it up as a text message, an email on any platform, iPad, and say, hey, welcome to Metaswitch, got a link. Go straight through to a portal that recognises what office you're going to, what department you're in, here's a load of cool stuff, here's your contract, here's some benefits. And you know, with graduates, you know, we might confirm people now, they might not start for like maybe another year. So during that time, we can send them updates. All this stuff's going on. We've got a party, like a Christmas party. Do you want to come? We'd love to meet your new team. You know, and the reason it's important for us is because we're growing quite quickly, and it's kind of how can we be more efficient at the good stuff we do? We're good at onboarding, keeping people warm, and making them feel already a part of the team. But how can we do that with more and more people coming into the workforce? From a HR team perspective, I talked about the maturity model. We're only going to work through that maturity model if we automate a bit more and become more efficient. And it's a big driver for that system. And then, like Jenny's point around, you know, being competitive, more than new people want. If you're in a software business, you don't want a paper contract. That's probably one of my first points that I've been talking. So it's work in progress, but we're quite excited about that system that we've agreed. So when we had the meeting last week, I was like, thank you, I'm really excited about that. And CEO was like, yeah, good, just deliver on it and make it good. So yeah, it's new for us, but basically the system's just going to automate and make more efficient the stuff we already do, just so we can scale.
Hi, you mentioned metrics.
Yes.
One of them was time to fill.
Yes.
Do you measure time to fill as from when a vacancy is given and goes live, or when the candidate or applicant that you end up hiring first becomes engaged?
So honestly, I personally measure it from when the rec signed off, so when the need is there. And I think you could do it other ways, but I think that's only helping us as a HR function. Like ultimately as a hiring manager, if you've got a vacancy, you've got rec approved, from that point onwards is when like you're desperate and need someone. So I measure it from that, and that's because I personally believe that's the right thing to do. I think it's more real. It probably makes it a little bit more challenging for us, particularly with some of the real niche roles we've got. But I think that's just reality.
I've got a question. You've talked about L&D side of things, but we work in a technical industry where we promote people because of their technical competence. How are you maintaining a manager's competence? What are you doing to upskill the managers?
Fantastic question. So as I said, when I came in to MetaSwitch, by the way, it's a fantastic team. I want that to be the message to come across. They didn't have a HR strategy, and they gave me an L&D budget, but there was no strategy around how to use that. So last year, because our our financial year ends in August, so our new financial year is September, I kind of fudged from February to August, I'll be really honest with you, because I wasn't sure what the needs were. We didn't have a strategy or training plans. We needed to get out of the business, talk more, understand what some of the issues are. That's made me more informed that when I went into the budget meetings this year, that there was a real need to focus on what we call our second line managers. So we have what we call first line managers, so first time managers, you know, who report to someone who report to someone, more like, I guess, team leaders. We've got really good development from them. We use a mix of internal and external training and ongoing support. We have like managers book club, managers mentoring, so they mentor and peer review each other. The gap that we've then got is from that first line manager to like the exec level, like senior level. Like I'm at, there's not a whole loads more, so people try and help each other. But because our people have generally only really worked for us, never worked anywhere, there's quite a vacuum, and there's no, even if there is a peer challenge, they only know the MetaSwitch way. So that's a bit of a gap for us. So what we have got approval to do, so I could have mentioned this, but another thing that I asked for last week when the CEO was over was support to put together a leadership development programme. And again, I'm working in the squad with that. So that's made up of myself.
I hope you found the speakers were interested in covering the subject of AI and machine learning, and maybe there's some insights you could use in your own business. If you'd like to join the Graduate Recruiters Network, or GRN, then please visit www.graduaterecruitersnetwork.co.uk. We'd love to have you along to our next event at the ICAEW in London on the 10th of December.
In comparison to some businesses, I don't think we like promote on technology alone. I don't think it's as bad as some businesses, but there are cases where you've got technical experts that shouldn't be managing teams, because the technical experts, let them do what they're good at, let them be industry leaders. So we do recognise that now, and our models do reflect that. It's not quite as bad as it could be. We have a little bit there. But we also have this new thing we use in working technology, so you're probably familiar with like Scrum Masters and POs. They're leaders too, so they don't actually line manage, but they've got a leadership role. So how do we provide leadership for them? And that's another category. So we kind of want to, we're probably going to tweak it more to leadership training, so we can bring that cohort along as well. How do they get stuff done? How do they influence? How do they impact? But it is basically where my energy budget's going this year. Any other questions?
Oh yeah, it was. I wanted to check with you. My company is in business for over 50 years, and let's say the management is a bit stiff in terms of getting students. You know, although we are a research company, so students, I think, is just exactly what we need. How do you, as a new person in your company, did you have to encourage your management to get the students and undergraduates to join, or it was in place already and you just have open-minded managers there?
I've got the reverse. So the graduate and early careers and like apprentices all kind of works, and that was their model. I've got the reverse where I'm saying actually that's really strong pipeline, but we've only got a finite number of those that we can take on each year, because we need a mentor, and there's that scaling up. So only the way we're going to scale and meet resource requirements is we open up our talent pools. So I had the reverse issue, which is, well, we're going to bring in software engineers that have been trained elsewhere. Like, we're the top 1% of the country. What are you on about? And so the way I get around that is kind of getting into their mindset. So they're software engineers. They try stuff, they iterate, they tweak, they develop, they go on. So I've adopted the same methodology. Well, can I bring on 1 or 2? They're my pilots, and let's just see if it works. And can we test it? I'm like, yeah, we can test it. We can look at some data. And that's kind of been the way there. And I try to just get into their mindset. Sometimes, like, you just have to know who you're talking to. And I think sometimes the head of engineering, like, I've asked for a fair bit over the last month, and the responses have got shorter and shorter to now, okay, just do it, just get off my case and just go away. And if it works, which I hope it is, he said to me, he wants us to be able to attract and bring in more. It's the only way I'm going to do this. If you open up more talent pools, let me try it, let me take on feedback. I don't mind iterating processes, don't mind looking at it. But have I got permission? And yeah, I got permission. You kind of have to build those relationships up and get credible. But I just think, what's your angle? And if you've got a lot of, to use your word, stiff people in the room, sometimes like is there one person in that room that you can maybe be able to sway? And then you can kind of say, oh, do you want to have coffee for the meeting? I'd love to pick your brains or something. And then get them on your side and then get them to like back you up in the meeting. I've done that as well. I actually did that yesterday.
Have you had instances where your agenda and what you're trying to achieve is not at the same priority level as what the business is working towards? And how do you get your agenda as a priority for them to support you in what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think it's always a balancing act. I would say when I was at the FT, sometimes I swayed a little bit more to the commercial side because that's what they needed me to do. The business was transforming and it had to survive. It's a 135-year-old business. Things had to change, like paper isn't the future. So, of course, there were things that I needed to do that maybe weren't entirely my agenda, but if my agenda is really different to the business agenda, something's wrong. I can think of maybe like some examples in Masterclass. The diversity and inclusion is quite a good one. So we have a senior finance role, and the team were doing some headhunting. We had like some agencies working on it. You know, I don't believe in positive discrimination, but it doesn't hurt to highlight the gap of senior women at a leadership level at Masterclass. So we identified that. I mean, it's obvious, but we showed that, and we said it'd be really good to just make sure that some of those candidates were female. Now, at that level, in this particular niche finance role, there isn't a whole host of them out there. Ideally, my preference and my agenda would be to delay that recruitment till we find all of those people. And we did get some through on the shortlist, and maybe one or two came to interview. We ended up offering to a male. Now, I can't positively discriminate, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't say it would be a really key opportunity to influence our senior leadership women. So I didn't quite win that battle, but if you make the point and you heard, actually we were successful in the next senior legal role coming in. It's all about having the right candidate, I get that, but I'd be really lying to you if I said that wasn't a key thing on my agenda. The only way we're going to inspire people coming into the workforce about progressing their career is if they've got role models. Yeah.
Any advice for switching perception from being a kind of supplier of a deliverable to being that business partner that you talk about?
Yeah. So, of the two job titles I've got now, I'm quite an honest and transparent person. My natural preference and the way I work and my conditions is more on the business partner side. So I love understanding what the business is doing, what it's trying to achieve, how it gets there, who are our competitors, you know, all of that competitive landscape stuff. But there's some small things that you can do. You can get talking to people at all levels, because it's not just about your stakeholders. You should have like a line of sight into all people. So what's going on, what's important for them, what's happening commercially. But in your conversations where you're trying to influence, start using we a lot more. Oh, I heard we've got an issue here, like, or, you know, I hear there's competitors coming in, you know, what are we going to do about it? So start to kind of assign yourself to that business more and talk more from that perspective. But I think it's about asking questions, it's about being interested. Sometimes ways to build up relationships. There's a great consultant out there that's written some, I could find it, but basically he kind of said it's about building sufficient trust quickly. So how do you do that? So sometimes there's a need, sometimes a desire, there's a problem you can fix. If you actually don't know, you're starting out, a great question that I like to ask is, what's the one thing keeping you awake at night? It's a really great question to ask a stakeholder. That's kind of ended on to me having quite a lot of jobs to do, but I love to be challenged and stretched. So I think it's just getting inside their head and let them know that you're there to support them. And that's something at Masterclass. They've had a good reputation within HR, but they haven't business partnered. So all the projects have been run in isolation. So that careers project and the engagement tool, we've actually worked with the business on that, so that they can see that we're partnering with them and trying to deliver it. They'd be my top tips.
We have had quite a few questions on the slide, though. We've only got time for one.
Okay.
If that's okay, Amy. Sure. It might have come from some people watching on our live stream feed, I don't know. But it was about your traction campaign. Presumably you work closely with your marketing team, to what extent, and also who gets the credit?
Well, it's actually an interesting question, because actually we don't work usually with our marketing department. And that's what makes it quite interesting. Metaswitch was started and ran by engineers, but only now are they sort of getting people in with other disciplines and backgrounds. And we do have a marketing department, but they market the products. So marketing attraction for candidates actually sits with us. So our graduate recruitment team will come up with the content, the ideas, the creativity. I'll say to marketing, can you design it? Graduate recruitment team get really upset because it's not what they like. They think it's rubbish, don't know how to tell marketing. I think the answer is a lot of the creativity comes from within the HR team. We should work probably a bit closer with the marketing team. They're actually based out in the States, we're based in the UK. Their focus is really on the product. Over time, whether that changes and evolves, maybe, but the credit's definitely ours. I'm sorry, I'm unapologetic, so I am. No one's getting the credit, I'm awesome.
Dad?
Well, there will be opportunity to ask more questions of our speakers, Jenny, Lynn, and Amy, on our LinkedIn forum, so please get involved on there. All our presenters will be introducing themselves on there, so by all means, fire any questions that you'd like to them. So I'd like to thank you all for coming along, and also one last round of applause for our speakers.
I hope you found the presentations useful, especially for those who couldn't come along on the day. Please keep an eye out on the website for our next Masterclass events throughout 2020 by visiting www.graduaterecruitersnetwork.co.uk. Our next event is on 10th of March. Hopefully see you there. Thank you.